Troubleshooting Windows and Applications, Part 2. In this nugget, learn about Windows tools, problem solving, and troubleshooting strategies. You learn what to do when a computer gives a blue screen error, also called the blue screen of death, or the white screen of death, as it now is appearing in most Windows. And application gives problems. This chapter focuses on problems that are after the Windows test has already loaded. Doesn't want for fix, you should generally apply the problem first as a creator and discoverer, always being careful not to compound the problem through your own actions. If the problem seems difficult, see it as an opportunity to learn something new. Ask questions until you understand the source of the problem. Once you understand it, you because most likely this will be evident. The fact that you can answer the problem and solve it, no matter how deep you have to dig, you probably will solve it. Once method of a problem used by most expert troubleshooters is the six-step diagram, as you can see in 1. This troubleshooting methodology can be applied to both software problems. The CompTIA A+220802 exam expects you to know about all the aspects of troubleshooting theory and strategy and how to apply the troubleshooting procedures and techniques in the session. The steps. First is that the interviewed user can back up the data before you make any changes to the system. And you examine the system, analyze the problem, make an initial determination of what is the source of the problem. Then, test your theory. If the theory is not confirmed, form another theory, or escalate the problem to someone higher in your organization with more experience or resources. After you know the source of the problem, plan what to do to fix the problem, and then fix it. Next, verify the problem is fixed and that the system works. Take any preventive measures to make sure the problem doesn't happen again. And last, document activities, outcomes, and what you've learned. Solve it at the beginning and walk through the situation in a thorough, careful way. This one rule is invaluable. Remember it and apply it every time. If you don't find the explanation to the problem after one systematic walkthrough, then repeat the process. Double check to find steps you overlooked. Most problems readers are simple, such as label or incorrect set. Compute logical through and through. The problem also very low. So if you're faced with more than one problem at a time, it can get too confusing. Troubleshooting situation begins with the interviewer if he or she is available. If you have the opportunity to speak to the user, to help you identify the problem, how to reproduce it, simulate it, and the possibility of a problem. Also, any data PC that is not active. On the next slide are some guide questions that you can use as your script when asking questions to the user. Read on. During you can determine troubleshooting rule will be very important about profoundly significant as while doing this. The first is establish your priorities. This rule helps for satisfy the customer. Decide what your first priority is. For example, it may be to recall lost data or to get the piece and running as soon as possible when as user or customer for handling priorities. Rule 3. Beware of your error. Remember that many problems stem from your error. If you suspect this is the case, ask the user to show you the problem carefully, watch the user how he or she is doing it. Rule number 4. Keep your cool and rush. In some situations, you might be tempted to act too quickly and to be drawn into the user's sense of emergency. But cool and don't rush. For example, when a computer stops working, if unsaved data is still in memory or if data on the hard drive has not been backed up yet, look and think carefully before you leap. A wrong move can be costly. The best advice is not to hurry. Carefully plan your moves. Research the problem using documentation on the web. If you're not sure what to do, don't hesitate to ask for help. It's better to be a fool for one moment than to be a fool for the rest of your life. That's one of my mantra. Don't simply try something hoping it will work unless you've run out of more intelligent alternatives. If possible, have the user verify that all important data is safely backed up before you continue to the next troubleshooting step. If you're new to troubleshooting and don't want the user looking over your shoulder while you work, you might want to let him or her know you'd prefer to work alone. You can say something like, okay, I think I have everything I need to get started. I'll let you know if I have another question. You're now ready to start solving the problem. Rules 5 and 6 can help. Rule 5 states make no assumptions. This rule is the hardest to follow because there's a tendency to trust anything in writing and assume that people are telling you exactly what happened. But documentation is sometimes wrong, and people don't always describe the events as they occurred. So do your own investigation. For example, if the user tells you that the system boots up with no error messages, but still but that the software still doesn't work, boot for yourself. You never know what the user might have overlooked. Try the simple things first. Rule number 6. Most problems are so simple and obvious that we overlook them because we expect the problem to be difficult. Don't let the complexity of computers fool you. Most problems are easily to fix. They are. To save time, check the simple things first, such as whether a power switch is not turned on or a cable is loose. Generally, it's easy to check for a hardware problem before you check for a software problem. For example, if a USB drive is not working, verify that the drive works in another computer before verifying that the drivers are installed correctly. Reproduce the problem and observe for yourself what the user has described. For example, if the user tells you the system is totally dead, find out yourself. Plug in the power and turn on the system. Listen for fans and look for lights and error messages. As another example, suppose the user tells you the Internet Explorer will not open. Try opening it yourself to see what the error messages might appear. As you investigate the system, refrain from making changes until you've come up with your theory as to what the source of the problem is. Can you duplicate the problem? Intermittent problems are generally much more difficult to solve than problems that occur consistently. Rule number 7. Become a researcher. Following this rule is the most fun. When a computer problem arises that you cannot easily solve, be as tenacious as a bulldog. Search the web, ask questions, read more, make phone calls, and ask more questions. Take advantage of every available resource, including online help, documentation, technical support, and books such as the one we're using for this course. Learn to perform advanced searches using Google search engine on the web. What you will learn will be yours to take to the next problem. This is the real joy of computer troubleshooting. If you're good at it, you'll always find something to learn, something new. User manuals and installation manuals for a device or software often list symptoms of problems with possible solutions and troubleshooting tips. Use search engine to search the web for help. Using your search strings an error message, a symptom, a hardware device, or a description of the problem. For the most reliable information about a hardware device or application, see the website for the manufacturer's own listing, as you can see here in Figure 5-2 for Adobe. This site might offer troubleshooting and support pages, help forums, chat sessions, and email support. As you test your guesses, keep in mind rules 8 through 11. Rule 8 is divide and conquer. This rule is probably the most powerful, isolating the problem. In the overall system, remove one hardware or software component after another until the problem is isolated to a small part of the whole system. As you divide a large problem into smaller components, you can analyze each component separately. You can use one or more of the following to help you divide and conquer on your own systems. In Windows, stop all non-essential services running in the background to eliminate the problem. Boot from a bootable CD or a DVD to eliminate the OS and startup files on the hard drive as the problem. Start Windows in safe mode to eliminate unnecessary startup programs as a source of the problem. Rule number 9. Write things down. Keep good notes as you're working. They'll help you think more clearly. Draw diagrams, make lists, clearly and precisely write down what you're learning. If you need to leave the problem and return to it later, it's difficult to remember what you have observed and already tried. When the problem gets cold like this, your notes will be invaluable. Rule number 10. Don't assume the worst. When it's an emergency and your only copy of data is on a hard drive that is not working, don't assume that the data is lost. Much can be done to recover the data. If you want to recover lost data on a hard drive, don't write anything to the drive. You might write on top of the lost data, eliminating all chances of recovery. This is an important rule. Rule number 11. Reboot and start over. Fresh starts are good, and they uncover events or steps that might have been overlooked. Take a break. Get away from the problem. Begin again. It's always Nice to see a fresh start. Some solutions, such as replacing a hard drive or a motherboard, are expensive and time consuming. You need to carefully consider what you will do and the order in which you will do it. Consider different solutions and select the least invasive one. Before applying your solution as best as you can, determine what works and doesn't work about the system so you know your good starting point. When planning and implementing your solution, keep rules 12 and 13 in mind. Rule 12. Use the least invasive solutions first. As you solve computer problems, always keep in mind that you don't want to make things worse, so you should use the least invasive solution. Keep in mind that you want to fix a problem in such a way that the system is returned to normal working condition with the least amount of effort. For example, don't format the hard drive until you first try to fix the problem without having to erase everything on the drive. In another example, don't reinstall Microsoft Office until you've tried applying patches to the existing installation. Rule number 13. Know your starting point or your baseline. Find out what works and doesn't work before you take everything apart or try some possible fixes. Suppose you decide to install a Windows 7 service pack to solve a problem with USB devices that is not working. After the installation, you discover Microsoft Office gives errors and you cannot print to the network printer anymore. You don't know if the service pack is causing the problems or the problem existed before you began your work. As much as possible, find out what works or what doesn't work before you attempt to fix. After you have fixed the problem, reboot the system and verify all is well. Can you reach the internet? Use the printer or Microsoft Office? If possible, have the user check everything and verify that the job is done satisfactorily. If either of you find a problem, return to the earlier steps. Good documentation helps you take what you've learned into the next troubleshooting situations. Train others, develop effective preventive maintenance plans, and satisfy any audits or customers or employers' queries about your work. Be sure to write down the initial symptoms, the source of the problem, and what you did to fix it. Many companies use call tracking software to record this type of information. I hope this has been informative for you, and I would like to thank you for viewing.